Okay, we will get started. So, my name is Justine Sherman, and I really appreciate everyone coming after work or after school to attend tonight's presentation, which is called The Coaching Model in Early Intervention. So, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm originally from the East Coast. I went to school at James Madison University in Virginia and then went to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And in November of 1997, which I'm really dating myself, I went to Boston for the ASHA convention and it was freezing. And I got recruited to a school district in California. And I thought, well, sunny California sounds great to me. And I thought I'd be there for a year. And 26 years later, I am still in California and the proud owner and executive director of Justine Sherman and Associates, which is a private clinic, both pediatric and adults, in Southern California, and we have clinics in Monrovia, in Claremont, and a new clinic in Camarillo. We have 20 therapists working across the 3 clinics and 9 therapists who work remotely, and they are scattered across the United States, and we see clients throughout Southern California. The coaching model and early intervention are my passion. And in 2012, along with some of my colleagues at Justine Sherman and Associates, we created the FLIP program, which stands for the Family Focused Language Intervention Program. And it's what all of our therapists use when we do early intervention. And the point is to ensure that parents are being taught how to use language and speech facilitating techniques so they can take those home and generalize the skills. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So just a little housekeeping. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to stop sharing and put in our chat a link for you to go to that will have a summary of all of the information from today, as well as a link to the quiz. In order to get a CEU today, you have to complete the quiz. And then once we get that, we can send you your CEU certificate. And throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please just type them in the chat, or if when we get to the videos, they may or may not work. Zoom does not love videos, so I'm hoping they will buffer and we'll be able to use them. And if we need a little time while they're buffering, feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat and we can answer some questions then. So let's get going. So first, we're going to talk about early intervention. And before we do that, I just want to make sure you understand this is a brief overview of what early intervention is and IDEA and parent coaching. I could go on for days about parent coaching. So I really recommend that after this presentation, you go to the links that I will provide you and really you can delve in a little deeper. For the therapists, it will be great for you to learn. And for those of you who are joining us from our referral sources from Kaiser or Regional Center, I'm so pleased you're here. And why I asked you to join us is you can see what therapy should look like for early intervention and should include the parents. So again, reach out during today's presentation or after the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. So, okay, starting with what is early intervention. So early intervention is the process of offering services and support to infants and toddlers, typically birth to 3, and they typically have developmental delays or disabilities or health conditions that may impact their growth and their learning. And the goal of early intervention is to reduce the effects of these challenges by addressing the specific needs of the young children in 5 specific areas. And those areas are cognitive development, communication development, physical development, social emotional development, or adaptive development. So we're really going to be focusing on the communication development today. Early intervention is one of the few settings in which there is a federal law, which was developed by IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Part C, as well as federal regulations that guide how we should provide our services. IDEA Part C is for state-funded programs, and in California, that's the programs provided by the regional center. And it provides federal funds to each state to support early intervention services for those birth to 3 children and the ones with developmental delays or disabilities. And each state manages its own early intervention program using these funds, but they have to follow federal guidelines to ensure that children and families receive appropriate services. Now, EI services don't have to be provided as part of Part C programs with the federally funded dollars. They can be through NICUs or pediatric rehab hospitals or clinics or preschools or, like JSA, private practices. And services in those settings may not be covered by federal or state dollars, and they may be billed by public or private insurances. So even if you're providing services that aren't as part of Part C, the information you'll learn today is still extremely valuable. And any information that you see here that is underlined is a hyperlink, and I have provided you the links in the summary. So you'll be able to learn more about IDEA here, Part C, at the end of the presentation. So with Part C, when the Infants and Toddlers with Disabilities program, which was also called Part C of IDEA, was created back in 1986, we had parents and professionals and advocates that all worked together to ensure that there were 3 crucial themes that provided the foundation for the legislation. And I've written the themes here for you. So letter A means that when it comes to helping infants and young children with developmental needs, we don't just focus on one specific area like speech or movement or behavior. Instead, we look at the whole child. So we're looking at them holistically to make sure that all their needs are addressed together. This approach ensures that services work together, PT, OT, speech, across different specialties and programs, rather than being limited by any one category or funding source. And that provides the best possible support for the child's overall development. Letter B means that the best way to support a child's development is by understanding and working within their family environment. So since families play such a central role in a child's life, it's important to consider their routines, their values, and their interactions when planning and providing support. So this approach helps make sure that any strategies or services fit naturally into the family's daily life, and which makes them more effective and beneficial for the child's growth and development. And the last theme that they felt was so important is letter C here, and that means that early intervention works best when parents are seen as valuable partners in their child's care. And it emphasizes that parents should be respected for their knowledge about their child and that they are actively involved in the therapeutic process. So by working together with professionals as part of the team, parents are empowered to make informed decisions and play a key role in helping their child reach their full potential. So altogether, these 3 themes are what make the foundation for Part C of IDEA. So natural setting, one of the key provisions of IDEA Part C is that the services have to be provided in a natural environment. So a natural environment just means that it is somewhere that a child who doesn't have a disability would interact, their home, out in the community. So regional centers require that services are provided in natural setting. But it's important to note that how you deliver the services, I think, is just as important to where you deliver the services. Because if we are providing them in home or in a community setting, but parents aren't involved in the actual therapy, you might as well be providing them, on the moon. It really doesn't help. So there are key principles and practices for providing early intervention services in natural environments. Now, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, which is called the ECTA Center, is funded by the Office of Special Education Programs, and it helps improve services for young children with disabilities, from infants to preschoolers and their families. And it works with states to make sure that these children receive effective support and interventions based on the latest research. And ECTA created 7 principles for providing EI services in the natural setting. I just want to talk about the first 3 of these principles. So the first one, that infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar contexts. The key concepts for this first principle are that learning activities should be fun and relevant to what the child and the family actually enjoy, and that building relationships is important for effective learning, and that learning should include chances to practice and improve these skills that a child's already learned. And lastly, that children learn best when they participate in a variety of enjoyable activities. So having it at home, toys that they enjoy, or out in the community and activities that they enjoy, that they're engaged in, is going to be the most beneficial. Our second principle is that all families with the necessary supports and resources can enhance their children's learning and development. So the key concepts here are all means all. Every child deserves support regardless of their income or their background or their education or skills or stress levels. And that adults who are consistently in a child's life have the most significant impact on their learning and development, not just early intervention providers. Every family has unique strengths and abilities that can help their child grow. And while all families are resourceful, all families don't have the same resources available to them. So support, both informal and formal, should focus on building on family strengths and reducing stress so families can engage in enjoyable activities with their children. And the last principle I wanted to go over here is the primary role of the service provider in early intervention is to work with and support family members and caregivers in a child's life. And I put here, this is where coaching comes into play. This is the major thing we're going to be talking about today. So the key concepts for this number 3 is that EI providers engage with the adults to enhance confidence and competence in their inherent role as the people who teach and foster their child's development. Families are equal partners in the relationship with the service providers, and mutual trust, respect, honesty, open communication characterize the family-provider relationship. So again, we have a link here for ECTA as well as the 7 key principles that you will have at the end of the presentation. So in the coaching model, a family-centered approach is essential, and it's important to keep this in mind for all the families that we work with. So ASHA states that one of the 5 principles that guide the implementation of speech services and audiology services in early intervention is that we are family-centered. And at JSA, family-centered is our number 1 core value. So looking at all of these principles here, it's important to note that we focus on family priorities and concerns when planning our interventions, that we create meaningful learning opportunities and provide information and strategies and feedback directly to the families, that we teach families interaction skills to support behavior, communication, and language development, that we tailor services to the family's needs and involve them in decision-making, that we recognize that family systems are dynamic with changing interactions and needs, and we involve the family and use familiar items during evaluations and therapeutic sessions. So now that we have an understanding of early intervention and IDEA Part C and natural setting and the importance of being family-centered, I want to discuss coaching with you. So there's so many definitions of coaching, and out there now we have relationship coaching and life coaches and work coaches. And when I think about coaching, I really think about, a sports coach that is there to guide its team. But in therapy, we think about coaching as an approach that guides families and caregivers and other professionals on how to build the capacity of all care providers to implement communication and swallowing strategies in natural environments. And what's important is that it's a complex process that involves the consideration of adult learning methods. We have to think not only how the child learns, but how we can teach their caregivers so they can be great therapeutic providers as well and generalize the skills. Another definition of coaching that I liked is that coaching reflects a supportive relationship that develops over time between the coach and the coachee, and that learning is consistently achieved and refined. We are not going to be able to teach a family member day one how to do therapy. So through this relationship, the early intervention professional, so us as therapists, is able to effectively convey the knowledge and expertise that we have in situations so that a family can be the most supportive member of the therapeutic team. So overcoming barriers to parent coaching, even though research overwhelmingly shows that a coaching model is highly beneficial, there are still therapists that have perceived barriers to implementing this therapeutic approach. And in Brown's 2016 article, and it's a lengthy name, Coaching in Parent Implemented Early Communication Interventions, Understanding and Overcoming Individual Barriers, he grouped these perceived barriers into specific categories, and they were understanding and knowledge of the role of coaching within early intervention, just having a preference to not do it, and skills with coaching. So some myths that therapists have about parent coaching are that it's out of their scope. But coaching is absolutely in our scope, and it's evidence-based, and it's in our professional ASHA guidelines. Another myth may be that coaching is sitting and just talking to a parent. But coaching is a very intentional process that supports the child-parent interaction. Another myth is that coaching doesn't give enough time to practice in session, that it's just us talking to the parent and that cuts out in our ability to do our therapy. But actually, it increases a parent's capacity to teach and then generalize the skills outside of the therapeutic session. They also may think that coaching is difficult or uncomfortable, and it can be in the beginning, but like all new things, it's a skill that can be developed and honed. They may think that coaching is when a parent just learns a strategy from observing us, but it really is important that we know that coaching encourages parents to learn through discussion and observation and reflection and action and problem solving. So modeling is just one part of the process. I'd like you to raise your hands if you've had any of these perceived barriers and had any concerns about implementing the coaching model. I'd love to see if anyone out there has thought any of these things. So feel free to raise your hands. I see Dina's raising her hand and Omar. Great. We've all had those in the beginning because it's something new and it's something that in grad school we're not necessarily taught because we don't actually get taught how to do good therapy in grad school. It's really theoretical. So this is something that takes time to learn. Now, the hesitation of doing the parent coaching model isn't always just on the side of the therapist. In an article that Rush wrote in 2018 called From Couching to Coaching, he wrote that caregivers may also appear hesitant to participate in therapy. And that can be because they don't want to interfere, or they think maybe that it's not their job to do the therapy. They want to take a more passive role. We've had lots of families that transfer into our clinic from other private practices in which they weren't allowed to actually come back to the therapeutic room. So it becomes our job then to get them engaged and to be a participative partner in the therapeutic process. So it's our job to make sure they understand it's not interfering. We want them to be part of the process, that it's not just our time to work with their child, but it's our time as a group here, as a team to work with their child. And sometimes they just feel overwhelmed with a child's special needs and they're not sure what to do. So again, it's our job as therapists to guide them through that. Please remember that the hesitation to participate doesn't mean they're disengaged. Think about these areas. Maybe they don't know what to do or how to do it. So take it on as your role to help. Now, Parental concerns we just reviewed are things you have to keep in mind before you start implementing the coaching model. So before jumping in, we have to make sure we're building rapport. It is important to remember that effective communication is crucial for success in any relationship. So you have to make an effort to connect with the family through open dialogue and rapport building. You have to develop a strong rapport in order to create mutual trust with the family and mutual respect to foster a safe environment for the child as well as the caregivers and as you as a therapist. And you can build this rapport by asking questions. How was their day? What's going on at home? What goals do you have for your child? What strategies worked? What didn't work? What support do you need? Once that rapport has been established, it becomes easier for you and the family to become involved with another and for the family to become committed to therapy. Without that rapport, we're going to see a lack of engagement and a lack of commitment to the therapeutic process. Another important thing to do before starting the coaching model is to set clear expectations. At JSA, we do a first session with every family that comes in. And during that first session, we talk about the family's concerns, what made them start therapy, what their goals are. We tell them about our therapeutic process and our philosophies. And then we set clear expectations about their role in therapy. And so you have to explain how the coaching model works and why they are best equipped to teach their child. So we can't expect parents to be successful in a role unless they clearly know what is expected of them. So why are caregivers the best teachers? Well, Lowry wrote in an article called Parents' Role in Language Intervention that they are the best because they're their child's first and best teacher. They are constant in their child's everyday life. They are able to interact and communicate them in their most comfortable setting, which is the home setting. They know what makes their child tick, what works, what doesn't work. And they spend more time talking to them and interacting with their child than an SLP can ever do. So a great visual I always use during the first session is filling a jar with 168 marbles, and those marbles represent the hours in a week. So I have my jar and I take out one marble and I show the parent, this is the amount of time I have with your child during the week. And then I show them the 167 marbles that remain in our jar. And I say, this is the time you get with your child. So who's going to be more influential? One marble, 167 marbles. There's lots of way of doing that visual, but it's very impactful for the family. So instead of concentrating solely on our worries about the child's development, we should base our how we're engaging them with what the family wants for their child, what they hope their child can achieve, and when those skills would be most important and helpful for them. When we integrate communication, intervention into everyday routines and activities, we no longer need to bring bags and bags of toys to the session. The emphasis will shift to the family's activities with the parent or the primary caregiver there taking the lead. And by using these familiar routines where the caregiver's already in charge, then they're going to feel more confident stepping in to support their child. So an activity could be brushing the child's teeth. I mean, we can do that during therapy, or picking out what we're going to eat for lunch. So those are things that a parent or a caregiver is already in charge of. They have the confidence in the steps that will need, and then we can teach them how to promote language during activities. That's all about family engagement. Children learn and develop when parents are informed about how to support their child. That's the parent competence we talked about earlier. And when the parents believe in their abilities, which is the parent confidence, and enjoy parenting in ways that enhance their child's language and communication skills, we're going to see better results. And lastly, families arrive at therapy from various referral sources and with different levels of understanding about speech services, along with different degrees of commitment. So it's our responsibility to communicate to families that their choice for their child and family to engage in early intervention ultimately rests with them. So success in this process requires their commitment and their involvement. One of the questions that we always ask during that first session is, why did you start therapy? And you're going to see a difference between a parent saying, I was concerned about therapy versus, yeah, my doctor said that they're concerned, so I'm just doing it. So we really need to get that buy-in from the families, that family engagement in order for our therapeutic process to be most successful. So, coaching model components. ASHA notes that coaching uses clearly defined, observable, measurable procedures to support others in their efforts to promote child learning and development. Remember, we said it's very intentional. So it's an interactive process that includes the following components. So we have joint planning. Joint planning is our first one. Joint planning is a shared agreement between the coach, so that's the therapist, and the family about what they're going to focus on and which routines or activities they're going to use to focus on that technique. So you can think of it as a roadmap for what happens between the visits and what to expect at the next session. And it's important to start and end each session by discussing this plan. So you have to ask questions like, did the plan work? If not, why? How can we adjust the plan if needed? Our next item is observation. So with observation, that means that we are watching another person's actions to learn new skills, strategies, or ideas. So in practice, this happens when you watch, as a therapist, you watch how the parent and the child interact to spot opportunities for developing new skills, as well as the parent watching you as a therapist to observe the different techniques and the actions. So our next here is action and practice. So these are real life moments, whether planned or unplanned, that give parents a chance to practice and improve these new skills or existing skills. And it's when a parent demonstrates what they would do during specific activity, and then the therapist gradually reduces their verbal prompts to guide them. So we have fading prompts during the coaching model. And the goal is for the parent to feel confident without needing the therapist's prompts. Next in the process is reflection. So reflection, this component sets coaching apart from other learning methods because it involves looking at what strategies are already in place and to see if they match best practices or if they need to be adjusted to reach the desired goal we have. And in reflection, it helps parents understand what they're doing well and what skills they may need to learn in order to be most successful. And it happens continuously during the session. So there are 4 types of reflection questions we can ask. And I'm going to move ahead just to show you those 4 types of questions. Again, this page will have a link to it in at the end. So in reflection, the therapist and the caregiver reflect on how the parent's strategy worked and didn't work. And these questions happen throughout this session. So they really build critical thinking skills and empower the caregivers. So the 4 types of reflective questions we have are awareness. Awareness number 1, that's asking a caregiver to identify what they know, what they've tried before, and how it worked. Analysis questions is when we're digging a bit deeper there. I want you to think about that Socratic method. So why do you think that happened? How will you know if your child's understanding? What do you think you could have done differently? So those are great questions to delve into what's working, what's not working, and why. Then we have alternatives. So alternatives ask, what else can we try? So what can we do differently? So what ideas do you have? What do you need to know? What could you do to try these things? What will you do differently? Those are all great questions to reflect upon with your parent. And last, we have actions. So those questions are based on what we've done and what your plan is. So it's very important that we don't give the answers to these questions, but we facilitate the parent in reaching the answers to the questions. So these are great items for you to have out as you're learning how to do the coaching model so you know what questions to ask. We're going to go back to this last page. Our last component here is feedback. So feedback is important because it's information shared by the coach based on what they're observing and what the caregiver shares or what the caregiver reports about their actions. And feedback helps expand the caregiver's understanding of a specific strategy or reinforces their thoughts or actions towards these goals. And there are 4 types of feedback that we can provide. So let's go to these. So we have affirmative, evaluative, informative, and directive feedback. Remember, feedback happens after the parent has had a chance to think about their actions or after they've practiced a new skill. So we are using those reflective questions to get them to think, and then we provide feedback, not feedback before we ask the reflective questions. So the first type of feedback we have is affirmative. This type of feedback recognizes what the parent understands and what they've shared with us. So an example of that type of feedback is, I see what you mean, or that must have been really challenging for you, or that must have been really rewarding for you. So we're affirming what they've said to us. Evaluative feedback. This feedback provides an opinion about what the parent is doing or telling us. So for example, I like how you paused and gave your child time to process that question. I want you to make sure you are being very specific with evaluative feedback because that's going to help guide them to what worked and what didn't work. I don't want you to say, good job, or try again without saying why it was a good job or why they need to try again. So you have to explain the why. Then we have informative feedback. This involves sharing ideas or suggestions. So before doing this, make sure that the parent has had a chance to reflect first by asking all of those reflective questions, because we want them to inform us about what they think should happen next. And last, we have directive feedback. Now, this type of feedback in coaching is less common. So before directly telling a parent what to do, again, make sure you've asked about their priorities and what they've already tried and what they think they should do next. So again, when we talk about these processes, we have talking about feedback and doing all of those reflective questions. So we've reviewed the components of coaching. Now I want you to see how we're going to use them during the 7 steps of intentional modeling. Again, this is underlined with at-a-glance coaching. That information will be provided to you. So before doing step 1 here, where the coach explains to the coachee what he or she is going to do, at JSA, we discuss our home practice and we let that kind of guide our session. So we talk about what happened during the last week. It's important, I think, to make sure we're asking that question properly. We never ask a question, oh, did you practice this week? Because a parent can say, yeah. And then we have to follow up with the next question. If we ask a specific question of, can you tell me how you worked on bombardment this week and what opportunities you used, that's a very specific question where they have to give us specific details. So once we get that information about the home practice, we can then use that to guide what we're going to do during today's session. So you really have to be flexible with your sessions. It may be working on the strategy you worked on last week because they still need help with that, or creating a new, working on a new strategy altogether. So we're going to then go to number 1. So we've asked them about the home practice. Now we're going to explain to the coachee what we're going to do during the session. So at JSA, we call that pre-teaching. So we're clearly going to discuss what we're going to work on and how it relates to their child's goals. So this is where you explain the what and the how. So an example of that is bombardment. So when we're doing our FLIP program, the family family-focused language and intervention program, we always start with pre-teaching and we say, today we're going to be working on bombardment. So bombardment is, and so that is a language facilitating technique. And then we're going to define it for them. We say bombardment's a fun way to help your child learn new words and language skills. And it means that we're going to give them lots of examples of a word or a phrase in different situations. So for example, Mom, if we're going to teach them the word jump today, then we're going to say, look at that frog, it's jumping. Can you jump like a frog? Watch me jump. Jumping's fun. So you can see I was using that word in lots of different contexts and the child's hearing that word. And then that allows the child to better understand and remember the word and hopefully be able to use it on their own. So it's like we're creating this language-rich environment. So you can see when we're explaining to the coach what we're going to do, we are defining it in a parent-friendly term. Especially with early intervention using a play-based model, it looks like we're playing with the child. So if we're not explaining what we're going to do and why we're doing it and how we're going to do it, it looks like we're just playing with them. And if that's the case, then the parent can't implement that at home because they don't know what the strategies are. So number 2 is giving the coachee a defined role while we model. So giving the parent a role, it can be as simple as, I want you to watch how many times I say the word jump. So we're getting them to focus in on the strategy. In number 3, we say the coach models while the coachee observes. So in early intervention, parents need to see what the strategies look like when it's used effectively. So at JSA, we've already done the pre-teach. Now this part is the teach step, in which we're modeling and consistently narrating the what, the how, and the why. So I pre-taught bombardment. I told them what to look for, why we're doing it, and how they're going to see me doing it. In the teach section, I am modeling actually doing bombardment. And I'm saying, Mom, Dad, did you see how I just did that? Or did you see how your child just repeated after me? So I'm drawing their attention to the steps that I'm using. In number 4, we're debriefing with the coachee. So in the debrief step, you're asking the parents questions like, what do you think? How does this compare to how you typically interact with your child during this type of opportunity? So you're really asking and delving into what's happening at home. In number 5, the coach invites the coachee to try what he or she modeled. At JSA, we call that flipping because we're using the flip program. So we call that flipping the role from the therapist to the parent. And during that time, we observe them using real-time guided feedback and self-reflection. So Brown and Woods in 2016 reported that parents were more likely to use communication strategies during or immediately following coaching strategies that encourage them to have an active role. And the children were more likely to use these targeted communication skills immediately following responsive parent interactions. So we are going to get more bang for our buck in our strategies if parents are actually modeling these strategies to their child. So in number 6, the coach and the coachee reflect on how what the coachee tried worked. So again, you're reflecting about how the strategies worked using those various reflection questions we previously discussed. And we want the parents to evaluate their use of the strategy and reflect upon the impact this practice has on their child. So remember, before we're giving them direct feedback, let them reflect on it and ask those Socratic questions. And last, we have this coach and coachee planning for how the strategy or activity will happen when the coach is not present. But at JSA, prior to doing this step, we do a reteach. So we had the pre-teach, the teach, and the reteach. So in the reteach step, we review the session and the progress that was made. So we can give them specific data that happened during the session. So today we worked on bombardment and Johnny was able to repeat 4 new words today. So we're really giving them kind of a step-by-step what happened during the session, what was successful, what wasn't. And this last step is to make a plan for home practice, which we previously called joint planning. So collaboratively, you will determine what will happen between the sessions and discuss this at the beginning of that next session. So these are the 7 steps for intentional modeling. I'm going to be showing you some of the steps of this modeling, and this is a video of a 3.5-year-old client who I worked with for just before this, just a handful of sessions. So in the video, you're going to see his mom, his Nona, his baby sister, and his typical treating therapist, Bree. You'll see her kind of popping through some of these videos. So let's see.
We're so happy to see you today.
Of course, that's true.
And so last week we were working on the consonant vowel and vowel with Braxton. Tell me about him in practice. What was successful?
Oh, he loves to pull out his paper and practice and show off with it, but just like going backwards with them.
Okay.
He really struggles with.
Right. So the vowel consonants
Yes.
we're having problems
Yes.
with. Okay. So that's what we're going to continue to work on today. How are you doing it at home? Just with the paper or?
On the paper, and then there's a video. The video she sent, we'll put that on.
Okay.
He loves to practice in that way. And then of course, anytime he's playing with his toys, I still, just like we do here,
Perfect. And how about the touch cues that we've been
Oh,
doing?
he loves the touch. Yes.
Right. And I
Uh-huh.
see when we do it, he does it on himself.
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
Yes.
Good. So today we are going to continue with the consonant vowel consonants. We can use our paper just sort of as the warm up
Yes.
drill for him, but really we're always play based. And then I took this out, which is our Pam Marshala vowel cues that I know we sent to you in the past, but I thought we would have it out, and really we're going to.
Okay, so you can see this video is a little dated. This was right after we came back into the clinic post-COVID. But I want you to see, I began this session by asking about home practice, and then we moved on to sharing what we were going to focus on during that session. So this was the joint planning, and the coach explaining to the coachee what I was going to do. So that's that pre-teach.
Moo like a cow.
Go.
Oh, good job. Mo. We need to hear your voice. Where's our mo? Oh, I love that. Try again. Mo. Wow. Me.
Can you say me?
Oh, you see yourself. Me.
So here you saw me modeling the touch cues, and Mom was right next to me observing. So this is coach debriefs with the coachee.
So how do you think when he's in here, I see high jaw, like closed mouth, a little talking with his mouth closed. Does he do that at
a
home?
lot of times.
He does that at home?
Yes.
Okay. What do you do to
It's
get
like-
him to open up?
He does it when he's nervous. And so I even can tell, like in the beginning of his appointment, sometimes he does that, and then by the end, he's not as much.
Okay.
But some days he does it more. On the way here, how funny, I was saying, oh, we're a whisper today, because he does like a quiet talk where not much facial movement.
Okay.
It's just,
So you're seeing it at home as well?
Yes.
then? All right. And so at home, you just wait for him to.
he kind of will just get out his own funk on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of pressure when we're in here and we're all looking
Yes.
at him
Mhm.
and having these expectations, which I think is why play
Yes.
is so important for
Yeah.
him.
Even like a new person coming over to our house, he's like that too.
Closed
At
jaw.
first,
Okay.
and then he warms up. Yeah.
So we could have, we could come up with a word where we say big mouth or big voice. Okay. What do you think would work for him?
I think big mouth.
Big mouth?
Like,
So in that video, I was asking Mom about something I was seeing in session to determine if she was aware of it and how she was dealing with it at home. So that's that debrief. I also asked her at the end what her opinion was on what she thought we should do in order to work on it. So what, if there was a word we could use, like big mouth, to get him to use and a more relaxed jaw or open jaw. And it went on to say, Mom said, yeah, I think we should use the word big mouth because I think he'll think that's really funny. So again, it was important that I wasn't telling her what we should do. I was asking her opinion. So this is now where we're going to flip the role, and I'm going to ask Mom to practice the strategies, and I make sure to guide her with specific techniques.
Mo.
do it, bub. Mo.
Come on in there.
Got it? Do you want to try one more time? Say mo.
Good. And so let's look at our picture, and for our O sound, remember it's nice. Look at Mama.
Look, mo.
Good one. Here we go.
You got it. Oh, okay.
Good one.
Again, I wanted to show you about the flipping the role. So now, again, I'm inviting Mom to come in and practice what we modeled here. And you'll see I encourage Mom when she says up, 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 because she did that on her own. So we want to make sure that we really are being cheerleaders here as well as we're coaching.
It's your puzzle.
So again, when we're reading a book, we don't need to read every single word to him, especially when we're targeting sounds. So if you think about the pictures in the book, how can we get a consonant vowel or a vowel consonant?
Okay.
And on some of them, we could do a consonant vowel consonant, like when he's driving the tractor going beep, beep.
Okay.
So just go with it and try and get our sounds that we can target.
Okay.
Oh.
Up. The tractor's going up. Up, up, up.
And
Down,
down.
down.
That's right. You come sit with
Do
me.
you see? You want to look through our book? Look, Farmer Ted's tractor goes beep, 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 beep. Oh, next page.
We can say when he turns, we say, oh, more. Anything
Okay.
we can do to get our targeted sounds, because we want to get as many repetitions as we can.
So Mom was able to read that whole book, and we really encouraged her to think about how we would get the consonant vowel and the vowel consonant words for him to practice. And in this clip, we play with one final toy, and I make sure that Mom's able to take the lead.
What do we do next?
You want to play this
Oh,
one?
Tell Mama. Kitty, that's right. Tell Mama.
Kitty.
Now we're getting the bigger mouth. There we go.
Yeah.
Jaws open. That's what we want. Oh, what did we do?
I've never heard of a kitty like that.
That was so good.
Yes.
Out.
Can you say
Out.
out?
Out.
Oh, you got them all.
Out.
Maybe you could put his plate on.
Plate
Yeah,
on. That's
it's-
right. Where do I put it? On the kitty. That's right. Okay. Can you help me push? I think Mama needs to help. Help Mama. Help. Help me.
Say help me.
So an easy way of getting parents involved, of course, they're sitting on the ground with us, doing play-based, and then we're handing them the toy. And if you have a parent who is a little hesitant, come on, Mom, come on, Dad, come on over, and you just hand them the toy and guide them that way. So in this next video, we're on step 7, and we're discussing how Mom will use the strategies at home that week. And it's important to make sure that the opportunities we're talking about for them to implement these strategies are functional for the family.
So how do you see yourself using this week? What's happening this week?
I think just more like working on all of the
All the touch cues?
all the touch cues.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Because he seems to do so well with those whenever we do implement them.
Perfect. So, and the reason I'm asking this week, each week may be a little different, so we can think about what opportunity is happening. So anything special happening for Valentine's Day?
No,
Nothing.
nothing
I know.
special.
It kind of snuck up on us.
Dad works all day.
Okay. So grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Do you have grocery shopping to do this week?
We go get a smoothie after this, so
Perfect.
that he loves to do. He loves
Okay.
Smoothies.
So I want you to think about everything we're doing here, because the activities we're doing don't have to be in a room full of toys,
Yes.
right? It's
Uh-huh.
anything. So in the smoothie, we could do, like when it's so yummy,
Yeah.
or more, or for the straw, open.
Yeah.
So lots of ways we can use this and keep using the touch cues. And think about every time you have sort of his undivided attention in an activity, how can I implement this?
Yes.
Because it needs.
And this clip's going to highlight the importance of home practice and generalization of skills across settings and caregivers. So again, this is that reteach on joint planning.
Oh, so we're almost finished for today. Any questions about anything we talked about?
So,
Do you feel confident going back home for the week?
yes,
Implementing?
I know. Yeah, I'm using all of this.
Good. And how are you teaching Dad what to do or Nana how to do?
Pretty much like what I learned from these, I go home and show them, or like I've showed Dad the video. Yeah.
That sounds great. Because if we can get everyone across the board
Yes.
following through,
Uh-huh.
he's getting the same cues. From
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah, that was music to my ears that she goes home, takes what she's learned here and shares it with everyone, because we know we're going to have generalization of skills if everyone across all of the settings are implementing the techniques. And our last video here shows the setting of specific home practice and the planning for that next session.
So what we'll do is practice our consonant, vowel, consonant
Yes.
at home.
Uh-huh.
And then next week, we'll start with that again. We'll
Okay.
see how he's doing.
Yes.
And then maybe we'll move on to a consonant, vowel, consonant
Okay.
and see if we can get some of those final consonant sounds. Guess what? We cleaned up and we're all done.
So those are all the videos that I think really highlight those 7 steps of the parent coaching and the modeling. So in summary, I think it's really important to remember that moving towards this comprehensive coaching model is not going to happen overnight as a therapist, but the benefits for your clients, their families, and you as a professional are going to far outweigh those perceived barriers that we mentioned before. So I wanted to show you, these are all of the references that were sourced for tonight's presentation. Again, those are going to be provided in the summary for you. This is a picture of our Monrovia clinic. And I would really invite you to join us on social media, because we put lots of great information for referral sources, for parents, and for you as therapists on there. And I thank you for attending. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to stop sharing. I'll start it off through a show of hands. Who uses the coaching model currently? Not many. Okay, after this presentation, who thinks they're going to try it? Oh, happy to see a hand raised there. I have a question here. Do you have suggestions for parents who are unresponsive or overwhelmed? My suggestion would be to start it slow. So what you're requiring of them in the session can just be a little. And it could just be giving them that role of, I want you to watch me do this. And maybe that's for a few weeks. And then we slowly add in their role. And I've had dads in here who had no idea how to actually play with their child. So we had to teach them just play skills first. So it may be just a slow process. But again, remember that this hesitation doesn't mean a disengagement. Favorite activities in clinic for high energy kiddos. We're lucky enough in our clinics to have sensory rooms that we've created. So we have swings and slides, and having a small trampoline with a handle. We take lots of breaks and run to the sensory room and jump. If you don't have that, having a yoga ball that they can bounce on, something that's giving them the sensory input that they need so that they can focus. Okay, see from Dina. Any recommendations for how to find a list of language elicitation strategies to teach parents just out of grad school? And what you said about grad school teaching the theory but not the practice really resonated with me. I know this isn't going to go over well with the students out there, but I think you could have a whole third year of grad school that just teaches you actually how to do therapy. So if it didn't cost us so much money to go to grad school, I would highly recommend that. You can look on YouTube, you can look on ChatGPT and type in list of strategies, and there's lots of them out there. So just type in language facilitating strategies for early intervention. And I do want to make this clear, although I'm talking about early intervention, JSA, I told you our number one core value was family-centeredness. We want parents in every session with us, no matter the age of the child. So if you have a 10-year-old in there doing our tick, still have a parent come in, because how good is that home practice going to be if a parent doesn't know where the tongue's supposed to be? So you can say, hey, mom, dad, come in. I want to show you where your tongue tip should be for a TD and an L. So coaching model can be really for any age. Any other questions? And feel free you can unmute yourself and ask as well if you feel comfortable doing that.
Okay, I have one. I was trying to type it in, but my mouse got stuck.
Okay.
What about children with very poor attendance? One student in particular, he's not in the school setting. Mom did not want to enroll him. So he's speech only at the district office. And last school year, I only saw him 7 times, and it was very sporadic. And every time was starting
again
all over. So what would you recommend to get mom to buy in and show up a little bit more often?
Oh, this is, I mean, if you work at JSA, you hear this constantly. Our first session that I talked about, I would recommend everyone doing that. And it is a time where you're actually speaking with the parents to set the expectations of their role in therapy. Now, one of the things that we talk about is consistent attendance. So we tried to figure out a visual for families that would resonate with them, they would understand why consistent attendance was so important. And we came up with the therapeutic arch. That's what we call it. And it is a brick arch. And we say, I want you to look at how all of these bricks are leaning against one another. And they rely on what happened. Well, they need the brick prior to them to support them. And that's the same as therapy. So we tell them, okay, we have this arch. We're starting with brick number 1. We're ending with brick, for us, say 26, because Kaiser gives us 26 sessions in an authorization period. We create goals based on the assumption that you are going to attend the majority of those 26 sessions, right? And if you don't, we can't reach our goal. And then we start talking about how the bricks are supporting one another. And you really highlight that what happened in the previous session drives what's going to happen in the next session. So if we had session number 1 and we didn't come to session number 2, when we get to session number 3, we don't just move forward from session number 1. We need to go back, reteach what we learned in session number 1 before we can move on. So then we have a lack of momentum. And without that momentum, we can't make progress. So unless we have consistency of attendance, your child will not make the gains. So we never rely on, it is our policy at JSA for you to attend, because parents don't care about policy. What they care about is their child making progress. So when we put it in the terms of your child will not make the progress because they're not consistently attending, and we can't have that natural forward momentum, we see better attendance. And if it gets to the point where we're really having poor attendance, then we say, at this moment, it doesn't appear that you can be committed. So there's not a judgment, because again, we're working with children and we're working with children with special needs. So I don't know what's happening in their home. I don't have a child with special needs that I can relate in a 24-hour basis what's happening. So it's not through judgment, but it doesn't appear that you can commit to it at this time. Why don't we take a break? And when you can commit, we're going to be more successful. So sometimes we just have to ethically say, now's not the right time for therapy. So I hope that helps.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're so
Very
welcome.
helpful.
Okay. It says, do you offer other
Um,
courses or resources? And absolutely, when you click on the form to do your quiz, I've listed a few courses. I'd love to hear what you want to hear next. I have lots of presentations I'm happy to do. Okay, from Omar, do caregivers and parents have to participate in the intentional modeling for the whole 50 minutes? Can they participate for 10 to 15 minutes? Okay, Omar, I can't see you here, but if you want to jump on, tell me why only 10 to 15 minutes. If you,
Because I worked in a early intervention clinic, and some parents are just eager to drop their kiddos off and they're out. It's time for they have errands to do, especially like on a Saturday. And I was hoping, so I've tried to have the parents come in for the 50 minutes, but most of them say that they're just really busy. They have to take care of their other kid or drop them off. So I was just wondering, maybe I could negotiate maybe, you know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
I hear you. I absolutely do. And that's what I hear from a lot of the parents that come from other clinics. Oh, well, we weren't required to do this. We require it. So I want you to emphasize to them that the more they participate, that we will see greater gains and the less time their child will spend in therapy. So again, try that marble. I get 1 hour, you have 167 hours. How successful am I going to be? And you could say, I'm a great therapist, but I'm not a magician. So we really need them to understand their role within the therapeutic process is not to drop off. We are not babysitters. We are here to teach them how to support the needs of their child so we can have generalization of skills. So feel confident in your communication with them and in setting the expectation that we are going to be less successful if they are not in with you for a majority of the session, because they will not know what works and what doesn't work. And they will not know how to implement these techniques effectively if they're not there and seeing it. And you know what? When you're talking about the siblings, bring the siblings in. It's a little more chaotic for you as a therapist, but that's the natural setting. So we have parents ask us all the time, do you mind if I bring a parent, my sibling in? Sure, because at home, this child's not sitting by themselves. So let's get the sibling to know how to do the techniques as well. So really, you just have to set that expectation, and hopefully you can get the therapists in your clinic to support that, where it's just what happens in your clinic. And you're going to see more success, I guarantee it.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you.
Okay. Is coaching applied to IEP programs? No. So again, the IEP doesn't fall under Part C. This would be, it doesn't mean you can't do it, especially if you have children who are working remotely and the parents are there with you. And that's really, I worked in the schools for 6 years, and why I went to the private clinic is because I didn't have the interaction with the parents, and I felt like I wasn't being as successful as a therapist as I knew I could be if I could get that buy-in and that generalization. So it's up to you as a school-based therapist to do your absolute best, which I know is difficult, to get time with those parents more than just the annual IEP. So is it sending videos home with them of, this is the strategy, this is what I'm using, try this at home? Maybe that's a way you could do it. Any suggestions for maximizing sessions for families with twins who are both receiving services? So I'm assuming they are receiving services, each twin at a different time, Or if they are at the same time, what we do in our clinic, because we have a lot of twins, we try them, schedule them at the same time, and we do co-treats with both therapists, both kids in one of our larger rooms, because that is the natural setting. That's what's happening at home. And then mom or dad don't have to jump between the two sessions. So that's how we work on it. If they can't be scheduled simultaneously, it can be where you have both twins in the room with the parent, and we're just doing, really both kids at the same time twice in a week. I hope that helps. So I see Kristen raised her hand. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Sorry, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time.
No.
I've got twins at my school site, and I see them separately because one talks for the other. So I thought separating them and having them in their own groups was a good way to go, but it makes sense. I mean, they're together at home, so maybe I'll try that.
You can absolutely. And
This year and kind of see
are
how
these
they
little
do.
ones? Are you?
Yeah. Well, the boys are now first grade.
Oh, first grade. Okay. So it really is then, if you're seeing them together, that's your opportunity to teach talkative twin to give the other twin a chance to speak. So you could come up with some fun saying for them. Oh, it's Johnny's turn. We'll have quiet mouth or whatever it is, where you can then teach him that brother needs to speak as well. And I'm so proud of you for how much you know. Let's see how much brother knows. So try them together and see how it works. Any other questions? Any questions from any of our professionals who are not speech pathologists, maybe coordinators or anyone working with Kaiser or Regional Center? If there's anything I can answer for you. Okay. So I have the information on the that link that I gave you, but I'm just going to put my email here in case you have questions. I'm always happy to help. As you can see, this really is my passion. I love getting parents involved. I know it works. So feel confident in yourself and your value as a therapist and as a coach to kind of demand it of the families that I'm here to teach you. Take advantage of that, and you will see the growth. So thank you all for spending your evening with me, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. I will post them on our Instagram pages and our LinkedIn and Facebook, so be sure to join, and you'll see when the next presentation is. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.